Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala khatim al-anbiya, ashraf al-mursaleen, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Today we will jump right into the bab which is part of the Salatul Jama'ah, yani the praying in congregation. This is the kitab of Salah in the book Untitled Mustaqni. Today's particular section is a very important one because we have a lot of people that fight and argue about this issue. So it's always good to know what's right in the light of the Quran and Sahih Ahadith on the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we'll discuss some khilaf of madahib and things as well, inshallah as well. طيب. الأولى بالإمام يعني من هو الأولى بإمامة الناس, يعني who is the best to lead the people in Salah. This is what we're going to talk about, right? Because many times you go to masajid and like if they don't have an imam assigned, people say, okay, who should lead? The guy with the beard, the guy without a beard, the one who's hafiz, the one who knows the ahkam, doesn't know. We always have these arguments back and forth, and inshallah we'll make things clear. Not going to pull any punches or anything like that, to be clear about what is our religion. Tayyib, who is the best? The muallif begins here with al-awla bil-imama al-aqra alim al-fiqh as-salah. Aqra, yani the one who is best versed in the Quran, with a shart that the muallif puts in there. What is the shart? That he is alim, he is a person who is knowledgeable in the fiqh of salah. Tayyib. First thing, there is khilaf of madahib on this issue. Yani you would assume that, as we know, most of you know the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, Abi Mas'ud, not Ibn Mas'ud, Abu Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. This is the hadith marfu'an from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, the one who knows aqra'akum, yani the one who has the most knowledge of the kitab, this is the one that should lead, right? But the ulama of Islam, they don't just base everything on one hadith, right? So Imam al-Nawawi, and the hadith of Abu Mas'ud is in the Sahih of Imam Muslim. In the sharh, in the explanation of Sahih Muslim, al-Nawawi, he says, قال Malik wa Shafi'i, that Imam Malik and Shafi'i wa ashabahuma, and their ashab, meaning their madahib. What did they say? Al-afqa muqaddam ala al-aqra. He says the one who has more fiqh is given precedence over the one who knows more Quran or understands the Quran. We'll talk about what does mean aqra. We'll get into that inshallah. Tayyib. So first, understand something. There is the qawl of the Imam himself, and then there is the mu'tamad, the relied upon opinions of their madahib. Right? Sometimes Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi had a qawl, but the Hanafi madhab today may not be his qawl. Imam al-Shafi'i may have a qawl, but the Shafi'i madhab today, madahib are dynamic. They're not static. They develop with the ulama of that madhab based on certain usul. Tayyib? I know that sounds funny because people assume, okay, Imam Malik said it, then that's a Maliki madhab. No, yani, you have يعني al-Mudawwana, and you have al-Tamheed and al-Istizkar and al-Baji and al-Shuruh and al-Kafi and so many other books that developed the madhab even after the time of Malik, for example. But here an-Nawawi saying that Imam Malik and Shafi'i and their ashab, yani the ulama of their madhab's qawl is, if somebody is more knowledgeable in fiqh, they should be put ahead of the one who knows more Quran. This is their madhab. On the other of it, as Ibn Qudama mentioned in Al-Mughni, that Imam Ahmad was ashabi, yani the Hanabila, and Abu Hanifa, Imam Abu Hanifa and his ashab, they took the opinion, no, the one who knows the Quran the best, he should be put forward in leading salah over the one who's a faqih. Tayyib. The hadith of Abu Mas'ud, it is very clear. Here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives taqdeem, yani to give preference to the one aqra'ahum, yani the one who is best versed in al-Kitabillah, in the book of Allah. And then he says that if they are siwa, if they are equal in that, then a'lamahum bis sunnah, then the one who knows the sunnah the best. طيب? And then if they are siwa in that, then the one who did hijrah first. And then if they are equal in that, then silman, yani whoever entered Islam first. This hadith is in Sahih Muslim, no doubt to its authenticity, and it sets an order of precedence. So why did Malik and Shafi'i go against the zahir of this hadith? And their madhahib, it's not just Malik and Shafi'i, yani thousands of ulama that went through their madhab. Because they said that who was this being addressed to? This is the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sahaba, they were afqa an-nas, they were the most knowledgeable of people, yani in that time period, and then after that time period we go back to them. So meaning that that was already a prereq given. So amongst them the discussion was there. Tayyib. But the Hanabila and the Hanafiya, they stuck to the wording of the hadith. And they said, no, the wording of the hadith sets a precedence, and the hukm that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives is not just for that time. Yani when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives a hukm that is particular to a time and place, then there is an indication. If not, then we take that as a guidance till the day of judgment. So we don't read into the hadith that which we don't find in the hadith. So they took to the zahir, the apparent of the hadith, and they said that means the one who is best versed in the Quran. But in a clear indication that is having understood that they understand the fiqh of salah, they added in the mutun of their kutub of fiqh, they said al-alim fil fiqh as-salah. Yani that given the prereq that the person is knowledgeable in the fiqh of salah. Tayyib. If somebody is really good at Quran, yani they have a beautiful voice, and we'll talk about what is this discussing beautiful voice and recitation, or are we talking about meaning? We'll talk about that inshallah. But let's give an example. Let's say somebody is a really beautiful reciter of Quran, he knows the ahkam, he knows the i'rab, he knows all of that, but doesn't know the fiqh of salah. And he gets up and he leads salah, and he makes a mistake that invalidates his salah and everybody behind him. And that happened. I mean, it sounds far-fetched, but it happens all the time. Many a times I've been in masajid and it's happened. What happens now? That now not only is the salah taken down in status or reward, no, salah is batila. I mean, and that person is responsible for everybody's salah behind them. And whoever put them in place is responsible because that was their responsibility to put somebody that is knowledgeable. Today we get somebody who may not even know the ahkam of tajweed or makharij or i'rab or the meaning or wuquf or any of that, but they have a nice voice. Like maybe they're singers, na'udhu billah. They're literally singers, but they can recite in a way that's nice. People put them forward. No, mashallah, it sounds so nice, it makes me emotional. No. Salah is not a concert, right? So first and foremost, a shart, a prerequisite to anybody being put forward to lead salah is they should know the fiqh of salah. If you don't know the fiqh of salah, how to make sujood sahu, what situations do you make sujood sahu after taslim, when before taslim, what are the arkan of salah, what do you do if you miss a rukn, what do you do if you miss a wajib, what do you do if you forget, what if you're not sure? If you don't know that fiqh, don't be leading salah. And don't be putting somebody like that in front to lead salah, because they will invalidate their own salah and everybody behind them. So having said, okay, if somebody knows those, and it should be inshallah basics, although unfortunately in the ummah today it's not common to even know those. If you know those, now we get into the issue of assuming that the people who are candidates for us to put forward know those basics. Now who is better? No doubt the Hanabila and their way is to stick to the hadith and stick to the wordings of the hadith and stick to the way of the sunnah. And what we find clearly in the hadith is to put forward the one who is best versed in the Quran. In the shuruh, in the explanations of that, there is a very important mas'ala given, that is this is al-awliya bil-tartib wa hiya ala sabil al-istihbab la taqdim al-ishrat aw bi-wujub. This is a discussion on who should be put forward in what is mustahab, what is preferred. Not that this is a shart or obligation. Right? Why is that important? I was in another country, I won't mention the name. No, really, I won't mention the name. And I went for salah in the masjid. And this masjid, mashallah, they have muftis and qurra and ulama and hafaz. So we went there, the imam, who was mufti, He wasn't there. And we waited, and the people, I was just one of the people, there's tons of people there, masjid was full. After a while, after 10-15 minutes of him not being there or something like that, the people took one of his students, one of his very good students, who was somebody who had memorized the Quran, he was a qari and he was a talib ilm and all of that. They told him, okay, you lead the salah. So he went and he started the salah. Now we were making salah, it's Isha, it's loud salah. We're making salah, and that mufti comes in. He comes in, and what happens is, he starts his own jama'ah in the same masjid right behind us. So suddenly we're listening to the imam and we start hearing another recitation. And he's doing it loud. And now people coming late start to join his jama'ah. They hit that first, he's in the back. So now you have people in the front, Allahu Akbar, going into ruku', and now this imam is still standing. He says Allahu Akbar, and people are getting confused whether he should be in ruku' or getting up in sujood. Like, what? Right when taslim, we made salam, many of the people, and myself included, we got up, we're like, what were you doing? And that mufti, he was like, no, I am awla, I am better than him, I'm more knowledgeable than him, so my salah behind him doesn't count. So I cannot make salah behind him. Now this is a mufti, right, quote unquote, right? So I, being the troublemaker that I am, I told him, Mufti Sahib, out of all due respect and all of that, and it was a different language, right? I told him, where did you get this usul that somebody who is lower in status, and I'll give you that you're higher. I'm not going to argue that point. It's okay, you're alim al-dunya, whatever, right? But where did you get this mas'ala? He said, what do you mean? Who used to lead in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. Who used to lead after Sahaba? The best of them, right? I told him, okay, what about the time when Abdurrahman bin Auf radiyallahu was leading and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed behind him? Who's better? Abdurrahman bin Auf or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and joined behind Abu Bakr radiyallahu, even Abu Bakr radiyallahu backed up, but Rasulullah joined behind him, right? And wanted him to continue. Are you saying that those Sahaba were better than Rasulullah or the Salah of Rasulullah sallallahu was batil? And then he just told me, get out. So, different issue, right? But this is why, to understand, this is not, let's say you are the most qualified and somebody put somebody else forward, khalas, make salah behind him, as long as the salah is valid, right? And we'll talk about those shurut. Like this is talking about what's mustahab, not a shart of the sihat of salah, nor wujuban. Tayyib. So, next issue we get into is, what does it mean that he is aqra, the one who is best versed? As the ulama in their shuruh, like Shaykh ibn Uthman in Sharh al-Mumti' and others have mentioned, as Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan as well, he says, أنه أجود, he is the most well versed في أحكام القراءات والإعرابه والمعنى, in the rulings of recitation and also in the understanding of the words and its meaning, the i'rab, right? And in Kashf al-Qina' al-Buyuti, he mentions that Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu anhuma used to say, al-i'rab al-Quran ahabba ilayna min hafz ba'd al-hurufihi. So he said the understanding of the wordings of the Quran is more beloved to us than just memorizing some of its words. So that means somebody who is best versed in the Quran, in its memorization, in its rulings, in where to stop, where not to stop, in understanding that if you change a harf or a i'rab, how will affect the meaning of the ayat. The one who's best versed in that, this is what's being discussed. Tayyib. Now, if they are equal in that, then what we found in the hadith is the one who is most knowledgeable in the sunnah. What is the sunnah in hadith? Meaning, if somebody understands those ahkam and they understand the meaning, they understand the rulings, then we'll look at thumma al-afqa, the one who has the most fiqh, the most knowledge, the one who knows the most of the sunnah about min al-sunan. And then if they are equal in that. Now we're going to go down a very comprehensive list, right? And I don't want to spend too much time on the lower stuff, because I want you to understand that this is because in some of the Muslim lands you would have 2-3 stuff that were all ulama, right? And then behind them were طلاب علم that for us would be ulama, right? So over there you have, here in America or in the West, we don't have that discussion that goes that deep, okay? It's find the one who knows the most Quran, who knows the ahkam the best, who knows, put them forward, right? If not, then you find the one who has, maybe he's not just good at Quran, he also has knowledge of Sunnah and Hadith and he studied, and put them up front. And the essential being the one who has the most fiqh of it, and so on, right? But here, if those are all equal, then the one who is the eldest of them, a son, why? Because we have a hadith like that of Malik ibn Huwayrith radiallahu anhu that said that we used to pray with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he used to say to put the eldest of you forward. So now this may not be in the hadith that was in Sahih Muslim, but this is why I said the ulama of Islam then find other ahadith and they bring those forward, right? To put all of the comprehensive views together from the different narrations, right? And there are other ahadith as well from that. Tayyib, what about if they're equal in age? Now this is again, you're all equal in Quran and fiqh and hadith and all of that and age. Rare scenario, but if it does, Zad mentions ثم الأشرف, يعني who has the most sharf, the most honored amongst them. Tayyib, the style of some people is just to teach the matan, and I get this all the time, just teach the matan, don't go into the discussions. But that's not my style. You want that, go somewhere else. We want to always make sure we're looking at everything from the adillah, from the evidences, that's why I spend time looking at the books that from other madahib and other ulama and back and forth to understand the evidences. So here, even though you will find this in many of the mutun of the Hanabila and many of the shuruh, that they will say al-ashraf al-murad bihi al-Quraysh. Yani al-Qurashi, those that are from the Qabila of Quraysh, and from the Qabila of Quraysh, Banu Hashim and so on. But when you go to Adillah, the hadith that is put forward is قدم القريش, يعني this is to put forward the Quraysh. Here, Shaykh Ibn Uthman, and this is a wonderful book, if you don't have it, I suggest you get it, called Sharh al-Mumti'. In it, he says that there are two ilal with using this. First ilal is that this is da'if, this hadith is da'if. Now, having looked at that, I saw some of the ulama of hadith that strengthened it, and then I looked at the chains and the discussion, and no doubt the hadith has weakness in it. That's the first issue. Secondly, as Shaykh Ibn Uthman says, that if we take the hadith to be reliable, even then this is discussing who would be put forward for leadership, and it doesn't mention sharf. Like sharf is not mentioned in the hadith anyway. So here, this is the discussion, and we've discussed this when we did the Sharh Sunnah of Barbahari, where in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the leadership no doubt was to be given to the Quraysh. Why? Because the best of the Sahaba were Qurashi. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Hassan. Yani, if you look at all of those Sahaba that are from the Khulafa, they were Qurashi. Not because they were Qurashi, but because they were who they were, but they happened to be from the Qabila of Quraysh. Your nasab by itself does not help you. Abu Jahl is also Banu Hashim, and he's also Qurashi, but his nasab didn't help him because of his a'mal. But those Sahaba were the best. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave this nasiha, knowing that after his death, between the Ansar and Muhajirin and other Qabail, there will be people who will put people forward, and those that Allah had chosen to be the leaders of that time were all Qurashi. And that is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we know that later on the Ummah was led by others as well. Khair, here Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin, he says that this is against what we find in the Quran, that the most honored people in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, atqa, the one who has the most taqwa, and so on. So he did not take this to be one of the shurut. As Shaykh Abdullah ibn Aqil, Shaykh Abdullah ibn Aqil, he passed away rahmatullah alayhi somewhat recently, the last Shaykh of Hanabala that we know. He also in his tahqiq on Zad al-Mustaqni, it's a small sharh, he says وَالتَّقْدِيمُ الْأَشْرَفِ قول ضعيف, this is a weak statement, بدون أدلة, it doesn't have a dalil. طيب, then next in line is going to be the one who's أقدم هجرة, whoever made hijrah first. Now, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hijrah was obligatory, right? In Mecca, until the Fath of Mecca, hijrah was an obligation. So whoever fulfilled that first is given a higher status, right? And whoever, for whatever reason, delayed it, obviously, the status is lower. Not mutlaqan, but this is the general rule. Some people like Abbas radiallahu anhu was told by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam not to make hijrah because he was from the intelligence gathering network of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But khair, this is a general rule. And this we find in the hadith in Sahih Muslim. So this is very clear. Today we don't really have that. None of us made hijrah from Mecca to Medina and so on. And ulama of Islam have given examples of things that people did, like those who fought qital early and so on. But not going to go too deep into that. Tayyib. He said then al-athqa, the one who has the most taqwa, no doubt, the virtues of taqwa and the fact that the akram عند Allah atqakum, the one who are the most honored in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ones with taqwa, and the ahadith and ayat and fadal of taqwa are so well known that there is no doubt to that. Then what if all of them are equal in all of these? Then they said qara'a. Qara'a is to draw lots. And this is an Islamic method of making decisions. It's not gambling, you're not putting money on it. If you put money, then it's haram. But if you need to make decisions, as Rasul ﷺ used to do, even about which wife to take with him on expeditions. And we see at other times the Sahaba radiallahu anhum utilize this method where you would draw lots. Like for example, you would have names. Like today we can say we could put names, or we can have, in America, like we pull straws or whatever. But all those methods to get a guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is permissible. And that would be the solution in the end. طيب. وساكن البيت الإمام المسجد أحق. And the one who lives in the house, the resident or the owner, صاحب المحل, the owner of the house, or the imam of the masjid has a greater haqq. This is a very important masala. If you go to somebody's house, even if you are more knowledgeable than them, even if you are, mashallah, the sheikh of whatever, your land and all of that, the haqq is for the person whose house it is to lead the salah. You're going into somebody else's dominion, somebody else's, what Allah has made them the amir of. Right? Now, they can allow you or ask you or give up that right and ask you to lead, as has been done by the Prophet ﷺ when he went to visit the Sahaba radiallahu anhum in Sahih Ahadith and so on. But this is something that because sometimes you see somebody go to somebody else's house and then immediately they just kind of push everybody aside, and you're like, this is somebody, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them in authority here. Now if they ask you, sure, no problem with that, right? But we should understand whose haqq it is. Tayyib? And here Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as the hadith in Sahih Muslim, he told us that nobody should lead in rajul, الرجل في سلطنته, in his dominion, in his place where he is in charge, meaning his house. Just on a side note, as in the longer version of the hadith also mentioned, not to sit in the honored places of a person in their place without their permission. Right? Meaning, what would happen in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The father or the head of the household would have a particular place they would sit. And children and others would not go sit in that place. When they came to sit for dinner or to talk, they would sit in that place. That was their honored place. And then if you go into somebody's house and you're like, nah man, I'm the boss out here, and you sit in their place, this is disrespect. And Rasulullah ﷺ, he forbid us from doing that. But this is a side mas'ala, but because the longer wording of the hadith includes it as well. Tayyib. So now in the Mullafi continues and he says, also this is also for a place where there is a sultan or an imam that has been assigned, right? Meaning that if there is a khalifa, then the haqq is of the khalifa to lead, right? Meaning if there is a leader of the Muslims, then the right is that he is the one that gives the khutbah. He is the one that leads the Eid Salah. He is the one that leads, for example, in the time of the Khulafa, and then after them as well, the leaders of the Ummah would be the one that would lead the Salah in Masjid al-Nabawi. Right? Because that was the center of Khilafah at that time. When the Khilafah moved to Baghdad, in the central masjid, the Khalifa would lead. Harun al-Rashid and so on would lead. And alhamdulillah that they were knowledgeable enough that they could give khutbah and lead salah and so on. Some of our leaders, may Allah protect us. Right? So there, it was their haqq. Now they could assign as Harun al-Rashid and others did, somebody else to lead occasionally. They could tell some imam, you lead. But this is to show an authority. Now, no doubt there were people more knowledgeable than them under their khilafah. Right? But that doesn't mean that you take away the right of the one who has been given that authority. Right? Tayyib. Now, if all of that is the same and so on, then al-hur, the one who is free from, in opposition to the one who is enslaved. Right? And this is something, for example, in our time, we look at prisons. Right? Sometimes I used to go get khutbah in a prison, and many of the prisoners there were more qualified than me, and I would tell them lead. But they would tell us no, because prisoners have their own rules. Right? The prison guards sometimes don't let them do this, don't let them move this way, don't let them go close to a certain door. So because of those restrictions, the one who is free from those restrictions has more haqq. Tayyib? Hadir, and hadir here does not mean present. It is the ones who are the city dwellers. Tayyib? And that doesn't make sense to us. Like why city dwellers? Why not the Bedouin, right? But you have to understand historical context, right? The ulama and tullab and the people of knowledge were in cities. Most of the Bedouins in the past were illiterate, they were rough people, they were not knowledgeable in fiqh and hadith and things like this. So this is not like from a particular hadith, these are all having to do with ilal, like having to do with certain reasons, certain defects that you find that have to be mitigated, right? So what would happen is somebody would come and the Bedouins were tough people, they used to be very assertive. So they may assert themselves into the place, but they may not have the knowledge for it. Right? Now again, these are not absolutes. Right? If the Bedouin is more knowledgeable, then we already discussed that was higher up in the discussion chain. This is way past all of that, right? And the muqim, ala al-musafir, right? The resident has right to lead over the traveler, right? Now again, I want to repeat this. This is not mutlaqan, this is not wujuban. If the musafir is a person of knowledge, then it's okay, you can put them forward, and this is done in the time of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, and the muqim will complete their salah. But if they are equal in all of that, then the preference is given to the muqim. Why? Because the musafir, his salah is short, and the muqim, their salah is full. So the confusion of the imam finishing and the people getting up and leading their own salah or finishing their own salah and stuff will be done away with by letting the muqim lead, and the musafir will pray behind them the way of the muqim. And he'll pray the full salah. Tayyib, al-basir, the one who is able to see over the one who's blind. Now again, not mutlaqan, maybe the blind person has more knowledge. Then in that case, like many imma in masajid, they're blind. But they know the most Quran, they know the fiqh, so they're put forward. But if all of that is equal, then obviously, somebody who's blind may not be able to see situations going on. Maybe they will not be able to, maybe see where they're making sujood and things like that. So it'll be easier for the one who is able to see to be the one who leads salah if they are equal in all of that. Then we go down to even the one who's circumcised in comparison to the one who's not circumcised. And I'm just kind of rushing through these because these are very odd situations. But obviously Muslims are circumcised. Makhtun, the one who has the circumcision done. But sometimes you have a revert, like somebody just became Muslim. And what is the hukam? That if they can, they should then get circumcised, even if they were reverts to Islam, right? But if you have somebody like that and you have somebody who's circumcised, obviously the cleanliness of the circumcised person is awla, is better, so they are given the haqq. Tayyib? وَمَنْ لَهُ ثِيَاب or ثَوْبان أَوْلَى. Tayyib? Thawban, here in the matan, and we can see in some of the manuscripts to say thiyab, but what is correct is thawban, meaning 2 pieces of cloth. Tayyib. In our time, mashallah, look at all the brothers here, they all have nice clothes, and you have silwar or izar, and you have thiyab and qamis, and you have all kinds of nice clothing. But in the earlier time, people didn't have a lot of clothing. Right? So the person who was put forward sometimes would be somebody who only has the izar, only has the loin cloth, right? And the upper cloth, they didn't have it, for example. Or they had one cloth and they were kind of struggling, So in those cases, then the one that would have two, they would have the izar and the rida, yani the loin cloth and the upper cover like you do in ihram. This was like, mashallah, he's got it, right? And then later you will find in the kutub of fiqh that they will say, and the imama, or yani something to cover the head. And then they went to show that some with a more completeness in dress would be mustahab. So here, if somebody is all equal in all of these ways, but somebody has enough to cover themselves better, then no doubt. Now, if the awrah is not covered, and for the man in the salah, not only from the navel to the knee, but if they have, then also the shoulders must be covered. And we discussed this earlier. So the awrah has to be covered, right? But this is going past that. Let's say the awrah is covered, but somebody else is wearing a dress that is more covering of the body, then they should be given precedence. Tayyib. Then we get to a very, very important topic, and that is the salah khalf al-fasiq. La tasih khalf al-fasiq. Al-Muallif says that salah behind the fasiq is not correct. Yes, I know everybody's looking at me right now. Tayyib. أولا, let me just explain what is a fasiq. فاسق, as Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan says, اسم فاعل من فسق. It is the one who does something from fasaqa, the one who goes astray, the one who goes past the boundaries and so on. That's linguistically. In the Sharia, we take it to be man kharaja, the one who goes out on ta'atillah, on the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bifi'l, with an action that is first apparent and then something serious, dun al-kufr. If somebody does kufr, that's obviously he's kafir. And he's shirk and kufr and things, that's separate. We're talking about somebody who's sinful. We do not include in this what is secret. Meaning, this is very important because some people try to have su'ad dhan now. Like somebody comes out of a store, like, oh man, I saw this imam and he came out of a liquor store. Well, maybe he was buying a piece of gum. This is not the way we do this, right? And we try to always be careful of assumptions, right? Some people I was in Medina, and one of the imma there, I won't mention his name, but he doesn't have a beard, right? And I myself, I'm talking about myself, not anybody else, I had a bad feeling towards this, right? And alhamdulillah, I had the blessing to sit with him and talk to him, and I'd read a lot of his tahqiq and the mutun he had put together and things. And in the conversation, he brought this up, and alhamdulillah, he made clear, he says, no, I say the whoever shaves is fasiq. He goes, but I have a skin condition. And I talked to many of his students, and it's true. So we should always be careful of not being overly eager to throw that label on somebody, right? If somebody has a sin that's between them and Allah, this is not our responsibility. If somebody made a sin and made tawbah, no doubt that they're not considered fusaq anymore. If they did tawbah, this is between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if somebody is a fasiq openly, for example, somebody makes zina, openly, and then somebody wants them to lead salah, as strange as that may sound, there are people who do unfortunately worse things than zina, عمل of قوم لوط بالظلم بالجبر and so on, and then they're muftis and stuff. People have them shaykhul this and that, leading salah, knowing these things. نعوذ بالله. But khair, what is the madhab of the Hanabila is that salah behind that person is not correct. And there's khilaf al-madahib on this issue, but I'm just giving you first this, right? And there is a hadith on this that لا يؤمن الفاجر المؤمن. But this hadith is da'if. Ibn Majah has this hadith. Abdullah al-Adawi is in the narration, and his teacher and many of the other asanid all have weaknesses in it. But ulama have not just relied upon this hadith. They have put forward other ahadith to show that this is not something that is correct. No doubt the imam is a role model. It is an ayah, somebody that is a leader, right? And if somebody is an open fasiq, then this is not somebody that you put forward to be a role model, right? Somebody who, for example, has no excuse, like there is no issue, and they shave the beard. I know people are going to ask this question, so I'm just going to address it now, right? No doubt that this is somebody who should not be put forward to lead salah, even if they are, mashallah, excellent Quran. Shaykh Abdul ibn Baz was asked, if somebody knows enough Quran to lead salah, and they know the basic ahkam, and they have the beard, and somebody else knows more than them but they shave, who should we put forward? Shaykh Ibn Baz said, the one who knows enough to lead salah and has the beard, right? Having said that, that doesn't mean that this is mutlaqan. Yani, like I said, some people may have an excuse, some people may have a situation which was like the skin condition we mentioned, or some other reasoning, right? Somebody could be under a zalim, some ruler could be a zalim and things like this. But if somebody doesn't have any of those situations, and they make isbal al-thawb, they make isbal, their pants go below their ankle, not to their ankle, up to that, but below their ankle, right? And they have no excuse, like it's not like they have some kind of defect or some kind of frozen weather issue or something, no. Then no doubt this is fisq, this is open fisq, and there's hadith about salah behind the musbil of the izar, and so on, not being accepted. I'm not going to get into whether the salah is accepted or not, because it's a very long debate, and even within the madhab there is discussions and so on. But we will say this, as the ulama have mentioned, the exceptions will no doubt be things like Jum'ah and Eid under a khilafah. Meaning that if there is a khilafah, or there is an Islamic government, even if it's not a full-blown 100% Sharia khilafah, but there is a Muslim Amir and he assigned somebody to lead. As Muslims, we have to go pray behind the Imam then, because he's assigned, we should be united. And if that person is a fasiq, they do some kind of open sins, then we still pray behind them, right? Because of the division and the disunity that would come in the ummah from not praying behind them. Okay? And this is the dalil of Abdullah ibn Umar and Anas ibn Malik praying behind Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. Shafi'i said Hajjaj ibn Yusuf had enough, that no doubt he did enough dhulm, that he will be put in that category of people who would do things that are no doubt that would make them a fasiq at least. We're not talking about takfir, but fisq, right? But Abdullah ibn Umar and Anas ibn Malik prayed behind him. But this is Jum'ah and Eid in that situation. So now what if you have a situation where you can pray Jum'ah, maybe it's a little bit further, maybe you have to drive a little bit, you have a little more hardship behind an imam who is not an open fasiq, and then you have a closer or more convenient or shorter Jum'ah or nicer or more AC or whatever masjid, then no doubt that is not acceptable. This is the madahib and the aqwal of ulama, it's not my choice. Secondly, if we look at salah being maqbool or not, whether accepted or not, no doubt there will be a harm to it. Without going into the deep discussions of this, no doubt there's a harm to it. So why would you? Right? First thing, why would masajid put forward somebody to lead salah when that's their thing? That's all they do. It's not like they're out there interviewing for doctor positions and doing this, right? Or whatever else, right? Why would you put somebody who makes isbal or shaves the beard or drinks alcohol or anything else that's sinful? All of those open sinful behaviors. Everybody has sins. We don't say we have to get ma'soom, somebody with no sin to lead salah. No, everybody will have sins. But sins between you and Allah are between you and Allah. But if somebody's out there drinking alcohol or selling alcohol, I've seen this myself, a person who owns a liquor store selling alcohol and then coming and leading salah, what's going on here? Why? These are things that are not acceptable. The muallif continues, كَكَافِرْ, like the kafir. Salah is not accepted behind the kafir. Obviously the kafir, there is no salah for the kafir, so how can you make salah behind them? وَلَا خَلْفَ الْإِمْرَأَةٍ, and it is not accepted behind a woman. And I'll stop here inshallah for the sake of time. But what does it tell you? That salah behind a woman, of a man praying behind a woman, is not acceptable. This is madhab Hanabila. And I'm making this clear because some of the people of their desires, people who want to sell the religion today, they will try to find shadh and nadir opinions and try to put forward something that's not correct. This is a matan of Hanabila, you can find it. If you look at the issue of regular salah, fard salah, men praying behind women, ijma'an, by the consensus of the Muslim ummah, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, Zahiri, every other madhab that whether exists or doesn't exist, Nakha'i, Awza'i, or by ijma', it is not acceptable. Ijma is a dalil by itself. I have hadith as well, but forget, ijma is a dalil. طيب. Now, there are some aqwal of ulama, as Ibn Taymiyyah and others have presented. Not that it's Ibn Taymiyyah's qawl, but he has presented, which mentions some very rare occasion. For example, he gives an occasion that no man in the family amongst mahram knows how to recite Al-Fatiha at all. He cannot even recite the tasbihat, for example, right? And this in the past happened. Meaning some woman became Muslim, she learned Quran, she knew Fatiha, she knew some Quran, and then some people from her family in the time of Rasulullah just became Muslim. In these situations, there's khilaf of ulama. Can she lead? Some ulama said because the situation is such that they cannot read Al-Fatiha, they're that illiterate, they don't know anything, then she could lead them from the back. Right? And this is not the qawl of any madhab today. It is not rajih in any madhab. But this qawl exists amongst the ulama of Islam. But this cannot be taken out of context. Okay? Understand that regularly women leading men in salah is not permissible in any madhab, and ijma'an this is incorrect. Right? So people who take this qawl, like Mr. Hansen, and then try to put it upon Ibn Taymiyyah or the Hanabila and misuse it, may Allah cure their hearts of the diseases, and may Allah protect us and clean our hearts as well. Tayyib. We'll end here today, inshallah. You guys want some ahadith on adillah for this, or are we good with the ijma' and things? Khalas, I'll give you hadith. Yani. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith al-Bukhari, hadith number 4425, he says that any qawm that has a woman lead them will not be successful, right? So obviously the leader here includes being an imam in the salah, because the imam is a leader and so on. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the best sufuf are those for the men in the first, and the worst being the last, and the women's last and best being the first. So obviously a woman cannot lead in that way as well. And this is based on these adillah and ijma' of the ummah. We'll stop inshallah.